Greetings, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Pammy Out Loud. I am your host, Pammy, and this is a podcast about making connections and finding community. Today, we are celebrating the beginning of season 2, where I'm going to be talking to many of my friends. I'm going to be calling this the season of Pammy and Friends, where I'm going to talk to people that I have connected with on various topics, and I'm bringing back a fan favorite from season 1.
Wow.
My good friend, Cass Grange. Welcome, Cass. It's good to see you.
Good to see you, Pam. It's good to be here.
Thank you. We are actually filming this on October the 27th, which this is a week that is particularly special to Cass and I because we are celebrating, can you believe this, our 6th year without alcohol. We are going alcohol free. It's been 6 years, girlfriend. High five.
High five.
Bam, bam.
Bam.
Can you believe that?
No, but it was a very good decision, and I'm so glad we both did it. And Pamela, you've been an inspiration to me.
Oh, and you to me too. I am sitting here with my Sober Sis hat on to mark the occasion. Sober Sis was the program that Cass and I went through, which was a series of emails and connections with other women that were pursuing the same path. And when we did it, we really, neither one of us planned to completely give up alcohol. We were just resetting our relationship with alcohol, so to speak.
Right.
And then we both decided to just kind of keep on trucking with it. And, Cass is a financial advisor for Watercolor Financial here in Austin. And one of the things I want to talk about before we get into the topic of the day is the fact of how expensive drinking is. We were talking about this before we started recording, and there is an app that I have on my phone I think it's called Sober Today, and it allows you to put in the date of your when you stop drinking, and then also on average the amount of money you were spending per day on alcohol. So you can pull it up and see how much savings you have and how many days it's been. So just a few facts for us, Cass, before we get started. This marks 6 years or 2,192 days. And I put in an amount of $10 a day as how much I was spending on alcohol, which I actually think is pretty conservative for me. As I mentioned, I was probably averaging a bottle of wine a day. And I'm conservatively can say $10 a day on a bottle of wine is probably at the cheaper end of what I was doing. And as you know, you can't go out for dinner and have 2 glasses of wine for $10,
No.
much less anything else, margaritas or whatever. So with my figures, I show that as of today, I have not spent, let me see, the amount is $21,924 on alcohol. So that's like a new car, or well, maybe not a whole new car, but a pretty good start on a new car. So anyway,
fabulous European vacation.
There you go, a fabulous European vacation, a few visits to the spa, as we said,
Right.
And now we have spent some money on non-alcoholic options, trying to find those, but even those are not
Not
as much. No, and they're not the priority that alcohol ever was for me. So anyway, congratulations, girlfriend. Celebration to cheers to both of us, right?
Cheers to both of us. And really that mindfulness and staying focused and every day having a goal can make a big difference in your life, financially, health-wise, mentally, sleep-wise. Yeah, the positives outweigh the negatives.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about how at the beginning of this, we would psych ourselves up by saying we're on the cutting edge of something, doing this whole sober movement. And I'm not sure we really believed it. I think we kind of said that to ourselves to convince ourselves, but it really has, that's really what's the word I'm looking for? That's been the truth. That has been the truth. We are seeing a decrease in alcohol consumption at all levels, particularly in the Gen Z group, they're saying.
So they are looking at the studies and making good choices, I think.
Yes. So the last time that I had Cass on, we had the discussion. We were talking about aging in place and how do we do that. And it was one of my most popular episodes where people came back to me with questions. They really enjoyed the conversation that we had and the insight that Cass gave us. So I invited her back. And today we want to take on the topic of, should you gift money to your adult children? And this is a topic that's got a lot of people talking. What to do and how to best support our children as they become young adults. And we have the resources to help them. When and how is the best way to do that? So, do you have some stories for us? Let me ask you. Tell me, in your experience as a financial advisor, like, what is maybe your best story you have about that?
Well, thanks, Pamela, for letting me talk again. This is a complicated topic. Let me just start with that. And it's different for every family, and fairness looks different in every family. And how we were raised is part of it too. So I had a client who absolutely had enough money. His wife had died. He had children and stepchildren, and he wasn't a generous person. He grew up in the Depression. He had all that Depression dust on him. So, he had saved more money from his pensions. And so, by the time you're 85, do you really need to reinvest that money? So I said, what about giving some of this money to your children? And he said, well, they don't need it. They live more lavishly than I do, which is one of the reasons that adult parents don't give money to their kids, because in a way they don't approve of how they're already spending their money. And then he said, well, two of them need it. These two. And I said, well, if you give it to two of them, you need to give it to all of them. And you need to also give it to your stepchildren. And he said, oh yeah, one of them who needs it is my stepdaughter. He said, but I have to give it to all of them because one of them has the money. I said, I just think it would be better if you gave all six of them, let's say $10,000, because I think that was the limit at the time that you could do without having to fill out the gift tax forms. And I said, but if you give them the money, you have to give it to them freely. So if they put in a hot tub, he goes, a hot tub? He hated that idea. I said, you just got to let it go.
Right.
And he said, well, I'm going to think about it. So then he thought about it, and then he mailed each of them a check. And he told me he was going to do that. And then he called me up, and I remember what he said to me. He said, I am lighter than air today.
Aww.
I am floating. I am so happy that I did this. And I think it was good that he did it. I think that his kids probably needed that money. And he got to see them thank him. And I don't think he was a particularly easy father to deal with, or stepfather. And I think it smoothed things out just a little bit. So, and it didn't hurt his financial situation a whit. And that's
a great story.
So you have to think, am I going to need the money? And I have seen people be overly generous and give their kids too much money. And then I've seen the whole deal of, I'm going to give my kids all my money so before 5 years, so there isn't that look back from the government, so I don't spend my money on the nursing home. And I would not recommend that at all, because then you have to go into a Medicaid nursing home. And in most places like Austin, Texas, that isn't really where you care to spend your last days.
Right, right. Okay, so say more about that. When the repeat back what you said about the money at the. I'm
You have to
sorry.
fly
Yeah, yes. Over
it.
5 years. What do you mean by that?
So
Do
there's this rule that if you want to qualify for Medicaid, that you have to spend down your assets. And we don't
got
have
it.
to
Got
do
it.
that, but you have to go down to about $2,000. So if you gift money to your kids through the years and you get rid of all your assets, then you would, in theory, be able to qualify for Medicaid. But I don't recommend that. I don't think it's a good idea, but
Got
you'd
it.
be surprised at the number of people who talk about doing
Wow, that's interesting to me.
that.
Do you have a story that you think is particularly illustrates some of the bad end of gift giving?
Well, a couple came in and they were very proud of the fact that they didn't have any debt, but they had become very wealthy and they were very generous to their employees and to their children. And I said, you don't have any debt, but you do have this debt obligation because you are paying your son $6,000 a month to live.
Wow.
And,
Wow.
he is dependent on that. He never got a job. And they didn't care much for that message. But what would he do without their money?
Mm,
And that's something to think about. You do not want to have your children be dependent on your giving. So, one of my big tips today would be to couch it as a one time gift.
okay.
Give
I like
something as a one time gift. Don't say, so now you can give $19,000 to each person without having to file the gift tax. So say you give your daughter $19,000, you could say, this is a one-time gift. We had a great year. Or
right.
in my case, I said, this is really from grandma and grandpa. I inherited some money and I'm gifting it to you over these years. And then for me, I put it in their Roth IRAs and said, Grandpa believed in funding your retirement. And this is really from Grandma and Grandpa. And they would be so pleased that you have a retirement account. So I'm trying to teach them my values and my parent values at the same time.
I like that. I like that a lot. Let's talk just to clarify for people who haven't been paying attention to, like, explain again what the actual gift giving rule is per taxing
Uh,
in the
it's
government.
complicated and people get hung up on this. And you heard you can give people $10,000 and $12,000. Well, now it's $19,000 in 2025. But what that really means is you can give people up to $19,000. You can give your son 19. Your husband can also give your son 19,000, and you don't have to fill out this tax form for the government. It isn't that you'll pay taxes on anything over 19,000, but they want to keep track of that, and it goes against your credit that you have. So, in case you ever have to pay estate tax, which less than 1% of us are ever going to have to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you really have a lot of money and want to give your kids more than 19,000, you can. It's just there's a few more hoops to jump through in terms of tax form, but you don't pay any more right now in taxes, and neither do they.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize that. And then, of course, there's also ways of setting up trusts where monies can go through that.
Correct. And that is for probably more complicated situations. Sometimes I think that people make it more complicated than it needs to be.
Okay.
They've heard, oh my gosh, what about gift tax and all this? And it isn't quite as complicated. And sometimes I think people do that because they don't really want to give the gift. But there is a reason to be hesitant on giving your adult children gifts.
So sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, let's talk about the pros and cons. Let's go down. I mean, and then, I mean, do you fall on an absolute, you should not gift your kids, or you should gift your kids? You don't have an absolute. So let's just walk through some of your pros and cons and the things that you have seen with some of your clients that have been maybe speed bumps or roadblocks to the process, and have either enhance their relationships with their children or maybe cause some problems down the road.
There are both pros and cons to this. And in a way, I think by not giving gifts in your lifetime, my parents didn't give us gifts after we graduated from college. They paid for college and that was it. So the pro of that is absolutely, I didn't have to think, well, they gave the other siblings more money than me. How is this fair? I never had to think they're manipulating me with their money because they never did. They didn't ever give us any money to manipulate with. They could never, there's the pro of that for the adult children is we can walk around any house we own and say, we in the bank put this together. We didn't have to think mom and dad did this.
Right.
So those are really strong pros, but here are the cons. My folks died at 92 and 93 and I was 57 and I did inherit some money from them. And it's quite remarkable to live to be that old and still have some money left. And they were very proud of that, I think. I think they were happy that we inherited money, their 4 children. But it came in a year where I absolutely did not need that money. It made no significant impact on my life. And in fact, the IRA I inherited, which I have to pull that money out over 10 years now. You don't get to stretch it out over your lifetime.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, that has changed. So I am going to be in the highest tax bracket of my life pulling that money out. So you think
that's interesting.
Well, so in a way, they could had a bigger impact on my life if they would have helped us a little in our 30s when we had young children and I was starting my own business and didn't have any money.
Right.
But, hindsight's 2020, but it made me rethink it. And so I changed my mind and I am gifting my children some money now, but in defense of my parents, I only have 2 children and they have 4. And the more you have, the more complicated it is. There's no doubt about it. If you have 1, I can make a pretty strong argument for go for it.
Right. And also you have to consider sometimes not every child maybe is emotionally stable or in a good position to receive.
Absolutely.
Right. And you don't, whether that's drug problems, whether it's gambling, could be any number of, they just are in a time of their life, they make bad choices, right?
Absolutely.
Or not choices that align with yours, I should say, even.
Right. And so bad choices to run the spectrum from, are they going to buy drugs with it, to, are they going to put in an in-ground swimming pool, which is why one of my clients didn't want to give her only son money. So
that's funny.
But she was honest about it. She said if he spent the money on an in-ground swimming pool, I'd lose my mind. I said, then don't give him the money. So it's complicated. And
yes, but I think there has to, you don't. My take is you don't want to necessarily give it with conditions, right? Like we're going to be judging what they do with the money. If you're going to judge, here's this gift and let me see how you're going to use it, right?
Absolutely. So there is that. But in a way, see, I did do it. I put money in the Roth IRAs, which makes it difficult to get it out.
But it's possible.
Right.
So,
to put conditions on it, you can try, but ultimately, if you give money away, it is their money and they get to do what they want with it. And who knows over the long run what is the right idea or not, is going on a big family vacation while your kids are still young a good investment? You can say yes or you can say no, but for them it sure might be.
Right.
And the other thing about it is, I guess I felt that people live to be so old now, and if I have the confidence as a financial advisor, and I work with good advisors, that I'm not going to run out of money. Why not help my kids buy houses when they can in, say, Austin, Texas?
Right. Which is pretty darn hard to save up enough for a down payment these days, right? To get a new house.
Although not impossible.
Right.
And so to give them that money, then I wasn't involved at all in the house they picked out. I don't even show me the possibilities. I did not want to know if they bought, 2 acres in Buda or if they bought a condo downtown. That's up to them.
Right.
And
right.
They have to pay the mortgage payment. So,
right.
It's complicated. It is complicated, but pointing out that people live to be so old now, and there's 2 issues with that, or 3 maybe. One is you want to make sure that people have enough money for when they're 65. The second is there are people who think they're going to inherit money and who are, but if you're 75 by the time you inherit it, you better have plan A for your retirement.
Right. And plan A can't be inheriting mom and dad's money. Right.
They could live a very long time.
Right.
Another thing that people can do is 529 plans for their grandchildren, which I think is a great idea. But I've had clients who don't want to tell their children how much they have for the grandchildren's college. And to me, one of the best gifts you can give your kids is that peace of mind that they aren't going to have to pay for the whole thing.
Right. Yeah.
Or half of it or all of it.
Yeah, because, a lot of times those college years hit at a time when you're still paying off the house, you're still, you're working, they're hitting at a time that you still need your cash flow yourself, right?
Absolutely. And some people are still paying their college loans off.
That's amazing, right?
Oh, there's a lot of that, but there's a lot of dysfunction with all of these loans and college loans and grandpa co-signing. That's a whole different topic.
Right. Well, yeah, I was just saying, we could get into a whole topic on. I can remember thinking at one point, I think that we may have done our kids a disservice back in the day when we said, you can go to any college you want to. Well, and then, okay, do you want to be taking on hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt to go to Notre Dame or to, I'm not knocking Notre Dame, but, okay, we can pay for a nice in-state college. Yeah. But if you want to go to Notre Dame or you want to go to a private college, do you want to set yourself up to owe a bunch of money, student loans? Is that worth it? That, like you said, that's a whole another show we can have.
Another show, yeah. So I guess I'm saying that it's complicated. And I'm saying that resentment can creep in both on the children who might feel like they're being manipulated or judged, and the parents who might feel like their children are not appreciative enough or they owe them something for it. And I think that as the parents, you need to let go of that and just let it go, because you don't understand all the dynamics. And frankly, we don't know what's ahead for anybody.
Right.
So going back to, if they spend the money on going to Disney World, which is something I've never wanted to do, not interested in.
Me neither. Mickey Mouse has always scared me, Cass. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't like him. Didn't like him in Fantasia. Don't like him at all.
Don't like him. No. And I'm not into Disney, but if that's what they want to do, some people told me their Disney vacations were the best memories of their lifetime. Well, who's going to argue with that?
Right.
So, it's a long, long road out there, and to set people up to make it a tiny bit easier in these days, I think is okay. And, but it's complicated.
Okay, so let's talk about what you think some of the, absolute have-tos. If you're going to gift money, you need to. Ba-ding, ba-doom, ba-doom. Do you have some hard, fast rules?
I think you need to attempt to make it fair between the adult children somehow. And it doesn't have to be fair, but you probably have to explain it then.
Okay.
So to say we're going to give your sister this car, our used car, but next time we're going to give you the used car, is at least an attempt at that.
Right, right, because it's an interesting dynamic. And speaking also as a parent of a child that has some special needs, he obviously gets more of our financial support than our other two. And it's something that definitely causes a dilemma between, for Brian and I. We kind of think about that, like we don't want the other two to be resentful of that, right? And they have indicated that they aren't, right? They've indicated they don't, but on the other hand, you almost feel like if you're the one that's making a lot of money, right, you're being punished because you're successful, right?
The prodigal son, it's in the Bible. Yeah, he did all the right things. And that story wasn't really about the son who came back. It was about him.
Right.
It wasn't about the prodigal son. It was about his brother who was
exactly.
mad.
Exactly.
And of course, nobody likes that story because we can all relate to the brother who was mad.
Exactly.
But I would say to talk openly about these things with your kids is such a better idea. And I've had a man say, well, I'm leaving more of my money to my daughter who's a teacher than my son who has a lot of money. And I said, did you talk to them about it? And he said, no, they can find out when I'm dead. And I think, wow, talk about lighting the bomb that's going to blow up after you die.
Yeah, because that problem is what happens. That is, we always talk about we don't always, but sibling rivalry is frequently viewed as I'm angry at you. If you're my sister, right? I'm angry at my sister. What I'm really angry at is my parents, and what I see is the injustice between how they're treating me versus how they're treating you, right? And the collateral damage or the fallout of that is the anger gets back towards, and I'm mad at my sister. I'm not mad at my parent, right? I get angry at her, that's the problem with. I know Dave Ramsey, he is a big proponent of your will and your inheritance, what you leave to your children or whoever you're going to leave it to. It should not be a big surprise. It should not be.
I agree with him.
It shouldn't be in the wood-paneled boardroom of the attorney's office finding out what each person's going to get. That should have been decided and known, publicized, to all the people involved, or else you're really leaving, a landmine for your children.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see how the father in this example could have explained it to the son and the daughter in a way that the son probably would have understood. But if your dad's dead and you're grieving and all you have is this will that left you out or cut out part of your deal, then people kind of get fixated on that. And then it would be very hard not to have a very damaged relationship with your sibling.
Which is, as a parent, what I want most is that when I'm gone, when Brian and I are no longer here, is for our boys to stay connected and be supportive of each other in whatever fashion that is. They may not be best friends, but that's what that's what you want as a mother. At least I do. I want my boys to be there for each other, and I don't want to blow that up.
Right. And that, I guess I'll close with the final story I just thought of. So I was at a Grange family reunion when I was 20, and Grandma Grange had just died at 94. And there was a shoebox full of her things. And I mean, pie forks. There were 7 pie forks. It's very little in a shoebox. And I said to my mother, who helped divide it between the sisters, they drew straws. And then one would say, oh, you take it, Dory. No, Lori, you take the pie forks. They were very sweet about it. And I said to Mom, in 20-year-old wisdom, wow, Grandma didn't have anything. That's so pathetic at 94. Nothing that didn't fit into a shoebox. And of course, I'm cringing now thinking about that. And my mother said to me, look around at this weekend cast. There are 150 people here who are her descendants. Look at all the love here. That is your grandmother's legacy, and that's way more powerful than any money or any possession.
Amen. Amen. Wow.
And that's what we got to think about. And it was true. It was totally, totally true. And they didn't fight over the pie fork. There was nothing to fight over, and there's something to be said for that too.
That
we have to think about our legacy.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting topic, and maybe another one for another day too, is like that, dividing up belongings after somebody passes away, when your parents are gone, and how is that going to go down in a way. I admit that it's something that I worry about even with my own parents, and I'm very close to all my sisters. How does that look? How are we going to do it in a way that doesn't cause hurt feelings? Why do you get that? I don't want to be that way. I don't want to be more concerned with what am I going to get on the other side than I am with the relationships that I'm going to have, not only with my parents, but with my sisters when it's all said and done,
Which is a really good way of going into it. But in the heat of the moment and in grief or in any of this, we can all get pretty turned around and mixed up. And I am not saying that I have been perfect at this at all, or I'm doing the right thing. I'm just saying that instead of outwardly dismissing, well, I'm not giving my kids anything, they can get it when I die, to I'm giving them everything now.
Right.
I'm on Medicaid. There's a lot in the middle that you can kind of think about and be creative about.
And I think that's a good point. It's not an absolute, you absolutely need to do this or you absolutely shouldn't do that. I think there is each situation, each family member, it's a little dicey, and it's worthy to consider both the pros and the cons of your gifting. Right. And I do want to say, I think that these conversations that are really important, and it's also, throwing things out on the table as a family, even to have the conversation is very valuable. I sure appreciate your insight and wisdom, and I hope you'll come back on. We have other topics that we want to delve into, and I think you're going to get to see more of Cass in the future. Before we wrap up, and Cass gives her final lawyer written disclaimer. I do want to say, if you have any questions, please email me at pammyoutloud@gmail.com, and I will feed them to Cass. If you have questions about what we've talked about today, or ideas for topics that you'd like to have surrounding this or any other issues, we sure invite you to share those with us. We're looking for this season to be a season of opening up eyes and making connections in all new ways. And I'm just really excited to share it with you all. So on that note, thank you so much. And Cass, let's hear from the lawyer.
The views expressed during this podcast are given in a personal capacity and are provided for general information and educational purposes only. They do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Watercolor Financial. Cass Grange is participating in this podcast without compensation, and topics discussed are not related to investment advisory services. Listeners should not interpret any discussion as investment advice or recommendation specific to their financial situation. For personal investment advice, please consult a qualified.
Thank you so much, Cass, and congratulations on 6 years with me. Let's rock on and go out for dinner and celebrate.
Let's go on a $22,000 trip.
Hey, we've been saving all that money. We didn't even put in the amount. We didn't even put in the amount that you saved. That's just what I saved. $22,000.
Let's go on a $44,000 trip.
It sounds great. I'm sure Tom and Brian are all in.
All right.
All right. Bye-bye, my girlfriend. Take off. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.